Hello, all, and welcome to Front Foot Official. And today, as you can see, a man who needs not a lot of introduction, Mr. James Buttler, all the way from England. And let me tell you guys, he's a journalist, he's a commentator, he's a director, and he's like an all-rounder. He does everything. So we'll be knowing a lot of things about himself, and I would like to tell all Indians that please follow James Butler, sir. He is having great cricketing knowledge, and we will be also learning a lot in the next 30 to 40 minutes. We'll be listening to his life and journey, and of course we'll be talking about India versus England, which of course India is going to win, I guess. So let us see. Welcome, first of all, James Butler, sir. Really privileged to have you on the show, and thank you so much for coming. It means a lot to us.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a series, the one you just mentioned there, England against India. Obviously, England had the worst of it, didn't they, in the winter? But I think it could be quite an even one. It's one it's a cricket series that I'm looking forward to as much as any for a long, long time. I think it's going to be a really good 5 Test match series, that one.
Absolutely. Okay, sir. We will be talking, of course, about India versus England. But first, tell us about your life, your journey. You have been part of many things. I mean, how did you fall in love of cricket, and how it all started? As a child, did you dream of being a cricketer, or did you dream of being a commentator, a journalist? I mean, how did it plan out? You have been active in everything, I guess. What a sports man or what a sports person needs to be. So please tell us about that. It's all yours. So please be free. I guess you should share it with us because it's an inspirational story, I guess.
From a very young age, 6 or 7, I was sitting on the sofa at home. It was sunny outside. My mum was telling me to go outside and play outside and get some fresh air. And I channel surfed around the very few channels at the time and found cricket, and kind of never really changed the channel since then. I was lucky enough that when I was a child, my grandma used to take me down to Kent in England to watch the Canterbury Festival, collecting autographs and marking things down in my scorebook and becoming a cricket badger at a very young age, and fell in love with the game when I was in single digits, and I'm in significantly more digits than that now, and still very much in love with cricket. Few things annoy me with cricket, a few things still make me fall in love, but Test cricket, the red ball stuff, I like the T20, I love the IPL. I ended up going down a completely different career path, but when I got to about 30, I realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I went back to university, did a creative writing degree, started writing about cricket, and I still am doing. And obviously, you mentioned the commentary there. I love commentating on cricket and talking rubbish about cricket for as long as possible. And then a few years ago, I started up the Cricket Badger podcast, which has had many guests that are my heroes on it. And I've really enjoyed doing that one. So sticking in Google Cricket Badger podcast, and you'll catch up on it. We're doing pretty much a daily one through the forthcoming series between England and India, where we have over the last year or so started making it so that we had what I call fan badges on. So we'll have Indian fans on there, we'll have English fans on there, we'll have people that are in the middle, and we'll talk about it hopefully fairly objectively, because I think sometimes with these series you can, England against India, when Australia are involved as well, people are very partisan, people are very precious about their own teams and their favourite players. And I think it's quite nice sometimes just to sit back and enjoy the cricket. To be honest with you, I'm English, but I don't mind if India win. I've got a lot of my favourite cricketers are in that Indian side. As long as it's good cricket, as long as it's competitive cricket, and as long as we see people looking like they're enjoying playing for their countries and stuff, that's all I want from this summer.
Yes, I will be sharing the link of the podcast channel in our description, so you need to go and check out. Of course, I will be sharing also sir's ID, Twitter ID. So you need to check it out. Of course, that we will do. I will be asking particularly about the podcast. Okay, sir. Now moving on. do you really think the biobubble thing is working in international cricket, because it is something which was started by England? So do you think it is working that well, because we are getting a lot of COVID cases? Is it the fault with the system, or is it the fault with the players and the management?
I think first and foremost, it's a very difficult situation, isn't it? And the pandemic over the last 18 months has caused a lot of grief. And obviously, with the IPL, I became acutely aware of the problems in India at that stage. And obviously, it ended up being suspended and going to be starting again in September. But so I think, yeah, there's more important things ultimately than cricket. But obviously, from a cricket perspective, I think England did really well in the first summer last year of creating these fairly impenetrable bio bubbles and getting cricket on, which was much needed at the time. I think not only for the finances of the ECB and obviously ultimately other countries when they got going, but in terms of just the morale of people watching the game. I mean, I think that was very true of the IPL, even though it ended up being suspended. I think I certainly got the impression from friends and colleagues and listeners in India that it was something just to look forward to each day, because you can only kind of stare at your four walls in lockdown for so long, can't you? But I think in England the bio bubbles have certainly been relaxed a little bit. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be double vaccinated now. I think England's been quite good with the vaccines. I don't want to get too political, but we were rubbish in terms of some of the other stuff earlier on with the pandemic. But in terms of the rollout of the vaccines, we've been very, very good indeed. And I think the ECB wanted to try and look after the players, because the life in a bio bubble, which fortunately I've not been in, but I imagine it's pretty tough. I mean, we look at cricketers as heroes. They're earning decent money, and they're living the lives that we want to live. But I think ultimately, if you're going to training, going back to your hotel, going to the ground to play, going back to your hotel, not having too much interaction with your family and friends and loved ones, that gets quite wearing and draining and difficult to cope with after a time. So got to feel for players, and I've got no issue at all with any players ducking out of series. We've seen Ben Stokes obviously for his mental well-being has removed himself from the forthcoming series against India. I think it's important that the players have been looked after. The ECB have been criticised at times for rotating the pack a little bit too much, people would suggest, with the first 11 in the test arena. But I think it's important they do, because you need to look after the players. You can't just flog them to death in times like this, because they are human beings at the end of the day. We see, a lot of people see them as being gods and heroes and incredibly talented, but I think ultimately they are flesh and blood, just like all the rest of us. So they do need to be looked after. I mean, going back to your initial point, I think the rules and the tightness of these bio bubbles have been relaxed a little bit. Maybe people have got a little bit complacent, because I get the impression in England that people think we've beaten COVID-19 now, and I think it's not a battle. The gold medal for this battle hasn't been awarded yet. Put it that way. I think we're still in it. We're getting a long way through it, hopefully, but we've not beaten COVID-19 yet. So I think we still need to be quite tight on it and quite aware of it. And obviously, as you said, there's been some COVID cases. There's been, thankfully nobody's got seriously ill as a result of COVID in cricket yet. But we need to stay vigilant on that. But I think, first and foremost, player well-being has got to be right at the top end of it.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's why my follow-up question to you is, one of our friends watching is asking, Raj Kothari. He's asking that the recent thing with Ben Stokes. Do you think that is it biobubble, or is it completely his personal problems that has opted him not to play in the recent India versus England series and maybe in the World T20? Is biobubble one of the reasons, or there are some other reasons also? Because it is a talking point now.
I've got to be honest, I don't know. I don't know what's in Ben Stokes' head. Right. But I think we should respect his right to, as we've just been saying, look after himself. It's important that the brain's a muscle. The brain's something that you need to look after, and you need to stay healthy. Because I mean, if you think about your body and you think about where you're thinking from, it's all inside here, isn't it? you want everything else to be well as well. But if your mind and you get fatigued and mental health problems come up, then you need to be able to, as Ben Stokes has done, just take some time out and recharge the batteries and try and get well again. So, you know, I wish Ben Stokes well and in his recovery. Hopefully he's back playing cricket soon, because obviously he's a terrific player and we all want to see him out there on the green stuff working his magic. But ultimately he's got to try and look after himself and get well, and hopefully some time with the family and away from cricket will help him do that. But I mean, I would imagine the bubbles are a contributory factor. You know, if you're starting to feel a little bit mentally fatigued, a little bit mentally drained, a little bit mentally shot, and then you've got the prospect of going back into a bio bubble for 2 months, it's not very appealing, is it? So I can understand that being a factor, but again, I think anybody that is struggling, anybody that is having difficulties in that area, the cricket authorities, which I think they are doing, need to just put an arm around them, look after them, and remove them from that, and get them better again.
Exactly. Okay, now moving on. Also, that question comes to our mind, that why England really do that. They shift the players from format to format, and sometimes they give them rest. That rotation policy. So, what's the reason? Again, is it COVID? Is it Biobubble? Or England have decided that they will be fielding different 11 in different formats?
I think ultimately that we'll probably see a cricket landscape where there is almost a separate white ball squad at times. I mean, India have recently played a completely different squad in the white ball series as the test team waits to start in England. And I think that's going to get more and more because there is so much cricket played these days. The IPL taking up 7 weeks of the season. The 100 started off in England. We've got all of these T20 franchise competitions. We all want to see the best players playing in the best tournaments and playing in for their international sides. But going back to a point a few minutes ago, you can't just cane these players and expect them to be fight. You know, we want entertainment. We want to see the best possible cricket. And if all they're doing is playing and playing and playing and getting no respite and no break from it, you're not going to see them at 100% all the time. And so it defeats the object, doesn't it? Because we want the best entertainment. And if they're not providing that because they're tired, I think there is too much cricket at the moment. We need to. I think cricket needs to just take stock a little bit and just stand back and actually think. Almost, I was hoping that one of the very few benefits of COVID would be that the cricket authorities actually did stand back and actually thought, right, what's best for the game going forward? But there's no evidence they've done that, I don't think. And I think players they need time off. If we're going to get the best out of the players, they need time off. But I think in the rotation thing, initially it was purely because of COVID, because they didn't want people to be in these bio bubbles, getting mentally fatigued and then flogging them to death and getting injured. Because as well with cricket restarting after a break, I think there was initial concern that particularly in the bowlers, they'd come out and strain things left, right, and centre because they hadn't been operating at 100% during the lockdown period. But I just think it makes a lot of sense to rotate. It concerns me a little bit that you get the likes of Michael Vaughan and commentators who are quite vocal, almost separating out the Ashes as being a separate case. Obviously, for English fans, the Ashes is special, but if it's right to look after a player and rotate players in an English summer against India, then why is it suddenly wrong against health stays the same and the risks stay the same? So I foresee a winter against Australia, which probably doesn't change too much in terms of rotation and rest and what have you. But looking after the players again, isn't it? And making sure they're okay. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think in fairness, I mean, I've been critical of the ECB on a number of things in terms of the 100 and in terms of how they operate domestically in England. But I actually think they've dealt with the pandemic very well indeed. I think that, considering that these guys are cricket administrators, they're not scientists and they're not doctors, and they had to read an awful lot of stuff and try and get them heads around an awful lot of information in terms of viruses and how you kind of limit the spread. And not a lot of people knew too much about COVID initially. So I think the ECB can take a kicking on a few things, but I think in terms of COVID-19, they've been brilliant.
Absolutely. The last 15 minutes, what we are discussing, that has been top quality discussion from my point of view, because Sir is speaking absolutely to the point thing. So I request you, if you are not watching now, do watch it, and also go and subscribe. What you can say, I don't know what it is called in podcast, but you need to listen those podcasts for sure. I will be sharing the link, of course. Okay, now moving on. Sir just raised a point that India started the two-string squad, but it was a blessing in disguise for England that they also played their second string squad due to this COVID, and it worked out very well for them, and they completely dominated in that Pakistan series. I mean, personally, I didn't even know a lot of players, even though I watch England county. I know Gregory, I know Vince, but there are some players who are very new. The wicket keeper, I'm forgetting his name. So there were a lot of players which England fielded. So since Sir is pretty much watching, or you can say pretty much linked with the English county, I just want to ask, how strong is English county? I mean, we have seen Michael Vaughan. Michael Vaughan made a comment that it's very difficult to play in the county rather than in international cricket. So is England county that strong, and that's why they are producing the players?
It's a big debate at the moment. It's a hot talking point because I mean I've made no secret of my opposition to the 100 as a competition. I think it's got I think some of the cricket's been really good, but that's not the point. The new format coming in has gone against what everybody else is playing, but B I think has potentially quite adverse effects on the 18 county system in England. There are bigger counties that have test match grounds. You have the smaller counties who are the Leicestershires, Northamptons, the Derbyshires of this world that maybe aren't quite as glamorous and as big, but I think they all have a place and a part to play in the cricketing landscape. They spread the tentacles of the game around the country. They've all produced England players at various stages. They've all won competitions at various times. Leicestershire as an example, they perennially finish bottom of the championship, but they've won more T20 Blast titles than any other county. So there are reasons that these counties have been around for 150 years or so, varying lengths, but roughly that period of time. They've got rich histories, and the fans of those counties, appreciate that. And all of a sudden, you create these 8 city-based sides with no history, wearing crisp packets as kit, and I can't get my head around that, and I think it threatens the domestic landscape in this country. And I think if you, I am a big fan of white ball cricket. I love T20 cricket, and I love the franchises. But the IPL franchises. My team's Mumbai Indians, and I started supporting. Well, there you go. But I started supporting Mumbai because initially they didn't win anything, and I quite like the underdog. But then they've won everything since. But it concerns me. I think that in this country you've got this seeming willingness to try and put everything in the cities and forget the tradition of the game. I think counties need to wise up, and I think counties need to be more professional at times. And I think they can't just, they've got to sing for their supper, and they've got to make it work for themselves. They've got no God-given right to prosper forever. But I think they do a good job for the English setup. And I think at the moment, a lot of the stuff that cricket in England is doing is making it very hard for further down the line for some of them to survive. But I think going back to your initial question, I think the standard's good in county cricket. In county cricket, you've got some guys that are either ex-test players or on the edges of the test team who are at the top end of the game. You've got a number in the middle who are kind of going up one way or the other, who at times can be really good. And then you've obviously got a lower tier who possibly never make it in county cricket, but are hoping that they get their opportunity. And I think, the future test match stars, the youngsters getting their opportunities, that's got to happen somewhere. And if all you're doing is having 8 teams with just potentially 88 shirts going around, and some of those going to overseas players, where are these youngsters going to get their opportunities to? Because we've seen, I mean, they maybe stalled a little bit in their test careers, but Zach Crawley, Don Bess, Ollie Pope, some of these guys that have come through into the England national setup have prospered from the county system, and their ability to play in the championship. You start to prune that down, you get less and less of those guys coming through, and I don't think that's good for the long-term health of the England Test team. Because at the moment, you get you can make a very, very good living, more than myself and you will ever dream about making in our lifetimes.
Absolutely.
You can make in one T20 franchise competition by hitting 15 off 8 balls regularly. Yeah, that's the bottom line. If you can come in with 6 balls left and going along at a 200 strike rate, you can make yourself a lot of money. I mean, you're not doing anything particularly special. You're shutting your eyes and swinging some of these guys and making it, but you're making a lot of money doing it. To me, that's important. It's entertaining, but I always think that the red ball is where all of your qualities are tested. It's where your technique is tested, your temperament's tested, and that is where it's at for me. And I think at the moment there's too much emphasis going on the shorter form and not a lot in terms of really trying to look for a long-term future of, particularly in domestic leagues, the first-class setups in the countries, making sure that they prosper longer term, because that's where we're going to get our test players from, and that's where we're going to have, you know, the Virat Kohlis and the Ollie Popes and all the guys we love watching in Test cricket have got to come from somewhere. And if we start to kind of block off that move into in England's England's situation, the championship, where are these guys going to come from? Because at the moment you get a lot of kids who are looking at the 100, looking at the IPL, looking at the T20 Blast, and as long as they can hit the ball in the air and hit it a long way, they couldn't care less what their technique's like. You stick them in a test match, they will get eaten on toast by somebody like Jimmy Anderson. We've got to get the foundation of those techniques in place, and I think at the moment we're maybe just moving our emphasis away from that a little bit. But fingers crossed that continues, because I mean we'll talk about the Test series in a second, but I think Test cricket, 5 days of Test cricket where you invest yourself as a fan and you watch it, you know, there might be a fairly sedate session where it's a little bit more tactical and nutritional, and then you'll get a more explosive session later on. But by the time you get to day 4 or 5 and you see the result in it, you've kind of, as a fan, you almost feel like you've earned the right to see a result, and you've invested in that game, and you've seen these fantastic players tested to the limit, and that for me is special.
Exactly. I mean, James sir just answered 2 of my questions. My next questions.
I'm sorry.
So no. That's great. That's the beauty of you. He understood what I'm going to ask, and he already answered that. Okay. So my add-up question to that is that that's the reason why India are not able to play spin well, and also England, you can say the other way around, are not doing that well in Test match cricket, because as they focus more in white ball cricket. I mean, we are seeing that England is not doing that well when it comes to Test matches. And what is the future of Joe Root? Will he play only Test matches? We are not seeing. After all, you are a Yorkshire man. So what it is with Joe Root? I mean, he's a great player. We all admire him in India also. So what is that, and why more focus on white ball? Why not in Test cricket? Because Test cricket was originated. Of course, cricket was originated in England, but as you said, Test cricket is the ultimate thing. So, and any spinners? What is the issue with the spinners in England? Apart from Jack Leach, you said Dom Bess, but Dom Bess doesn't. I mean, he has not got that stature, or he has not been that popular in the recent things. So these are my 2-3 questions. I mean, yes, we spoke about the greatness of England, but always there are some scope of improvement. So if you can throw some light on these.
I'll try, and you asked me about 8 questions there. I'm going to try and get through them. If I miss anything, reminds me.
Yeah, I will remind you.
I think England are just trying to work their way out of a little bit of a slump in Test cricket. England are very capable of producing a really good day of Test cricket, and then they're very capable of following that up with a poorer day. And I think, you know, the biggest frailty is the top order. The top sort of three in the order haven't been particularly consistent. England are still trying to find a formula there. Obviously, Rory Burns and Dom Sibley have the opening berths at the moment. Zach Crawley has been at number 3, but there is are there a huge number of replacements for them? I'm not sure. Hasib Hamid's come into the squad for this forthcoming series, but England have got openers at the moment that are averaging about 30, which really isn't good enough longer term in Test cricket. You want your openers to be averaging at least 35, if not 40. So there is that. I mean, it's the job of an opener in Test cricket isn't the easiest one, and some of the tracks in England and around the world make the new ball the threat, and then it settles down after that, so the openers can fall victim to that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think the 3 players I mentioned there, if they do start against India, are under pressure and need to perform this summer, going into a winter with the Ashes as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how they cope with that pressure and how India are maybe able to prey upon that weakness potentially in England's top order. I think Joe Root is. I mean, you say India love him. India have never bought him in the IPL, have they? He's been in the auction, I think, a couple of times.
But I guess Joe Root is not that much interested in IPL, to be honest.
Well, I think he's tried to get in it a couple of times, and he's been in the auction, down for the auction, but been bypassed. But I think there is. I mean, it's certainly in T20 cricket. I mean, David Malan's a good example as well of somebody that knocks it around a little bit more before he opens his shoulders later on. There is that need at times for a team to have somebody that maybe goes along a little bit more sensibly, so the other players can play around him. Joe Root performs that role. I think there was a move by England to realising the fact that he'd got the pressures of the Test captaincy and had all of that on his shoulders, particularly during a pandemic, to maybe remove him from the white ball firing line. It'll be interesting to see when that T20 World Cup squad for England is announced, whether he will be in the mix for that, because he's obviously got a huge amount of experience and he's a very good T20 player. So he's, even if he's not in the first 11 plans, he may be in the extended squad, which might be a little bit bigger because of COVID. So
20,
the squads might be, So I'd be surprised if he's certainly not in the discussions for that squad. If he doesn't play. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, Joe Root's got a very a difficult kind of 18 months. If you go back to before the tour of India and in Sri Lanka, I mean, he obviously started off in Sri Lanka like a house on fire. With he was scoring centuries left, right, and centre. He took that into the first test against India as well, and then obviously India then some really turning tracks, and England struggled. Joe Root's a very good player of spin, but against the likes of Ashwin, that's always going to be tough. But that series away against India, the series at home against India, and then the Ashes this winter will go a long way towards defining Joe Root's captaincy of England. And how he's remembered. He's on the verge of becoming the most capped Test captain for England, going past Michael Vaughan and Atherton and all of those guys that were long-term captains. Root's been in that job for quite a long time now. I think if he was to lose the Ashes this winter, he'd become the first England captain to lose 3 Ashes series. So there's a lot on the line, I think, for Joe Root and for the England side. I mean, I don't know whether if he was to lose those, would England replace him? The conversation around the England captaincy has always been that is there an obvious candidate to just come in and take it over? And I don't think there is, and I don't think there still is, because even no matter how good Josh Buttler is in the IPL and against white ball, he's not particularly cemented his place, I don't think, in that Test side just yet. So there's discussion around the various positions. And it's whether Joe Root will want to keep that job as well, because he's got a young family. There is more to life than cricket. No matter how much we talk about cricket and we love cricket, there is more to life than cricket. Whether he'll want to saddle himself with another cycle of being England captain is only he will know that at the moment. Or maybe he doesn't even know that at the moment. He might not know that until the final ball in the Ashes is hit this winter. So there's a few interesting permutations for Team England. Obviously, the likes of Broad and Anderson aren't getting any younger.
Exactly.
We keep every year we talk about, is this going to be Jimmy Anderson's last year, and he continues to get better, if anything. And he'll certainly be a threat for the Indian batsmen going through this English summer. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting little sort of sideshows with England going over the next 12 months in the Test arena, which I think are going to be quite interesting to see how they're resolved. You've got a number of young players like Crawley and Pope who have all of the talent in the world by the looks of it, but have become a little bit too used to getting a very nice looking 22 and then getting out in Test matches. And 22s don't win you Test matches. So they need to start to go big. And if they get a start, they need to make some of them at least count.
Exactly.
So that they're match influencing knocks. So yeah, there's question marks all the way through the England Test setup where very few question marks exist in the white ball teams. There are quite a lot of question marks in the Test teams.
Okay. Now we'll be wrapping up the show in 5 to 7 minutes. So the massive question. After that, I will be asking you 2-3 light questions. But this massive question, prediction for the India versus England series: is the weather going to suit India? Because I think it's English summer, as they say, but we are not sure what's the weather in England. What will the pitches? And your prediction for the World T20 also. So if you can,
they are massive questions, and you give me 5 minutes to answer that.
Sure, you can.
I think it's going to be a terrific 5 Test matches, and I think it's very difficult to call it at the moment. I think India have got a lot more confidence going away. Obviously, that trip to Australia where they were down to almost like their third team. With I mean, some of the guys that came in really did do themselves a lot of good. Siraj and what have you came in and performed brilliantly, and to get a series win against Australia away is never easy, despite the fact that I don't think Australia are fantastic at the moment. So there's a number of things in that Indian team where they, I think, probably for the first time ever come to England actually really thinking we can win this. I think in the past, India have come to England thinking we want to be competitive. We don't want to be embarrassed at times. We might be able to win the odd Test match, but they come this time, I think, actually thinking we can win this series. And England can go one or two ways. You know, we talk about the question marks in that England Test team. Well, if they get good positive answers, England can be very strong in home conditions. Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, two of the most feared bowlers in world cricket in their own conditions, are always going to be a threat for India's top order, who don't always play the moving ball particularly well. So it's going to be fascinating. Really is starting Trent Bridge on Wednesday, obviously, and I can't wait for it to get going. I think it's going to be very, very tight. I don't think there's going to be too many draws in this series. I've not checked the long range weather forecast. The weather where I am today in England is raining. We've had 2 or 3 weeks of sunshine, but it's started to break up a little bit. But then I think it's starting to get better again as the Test series starts. I think it's going to be 3-2 one way or the other, and I don't know. I don't know
who is 3, who is 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3-2 to England, but
okay, that's obvious.
It would not surprise me if it was 3-2 to India. It just depends on who plays better. I mean, it's the perfect series because it is literally who turns up, who plays better, will deserve to win it, and that's that's a really nicely balanced series. In terms of your question on the World T20, that's even more of a lottery, isn't it? Because you go into that. I mean, the way T20s are, anybody can beat anybody on the day. If you know, there's probably 6 teams go into that tournament with real aspirations of lifting the trophy. India are one team, England are another, but even the likes of the West Indies, Pakistan, are very temperamental at times. But if they hit some momentum, they've got the kind of players that can win matches, and that is going to be fascinating as well to see who wins that World T20. Obviously, in sort of fairly neutral conditions as the IPL was. And I thought, I don't know if you agree with this, but I thought when the IPL went to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah for that full incarnation, I thought it leveled things off a little bit because you didn't have the vociferous home crowds getting behind Mumbai Wankhede or
Yeah.
whatever. And I thought it leveled. It led to some quite tight matches, and no team was particularly dominant. It was one of the tight. I think it was the tightest IPL ever. And it might be the same for the World T20 being played in the UAE. I think it might level things off quite a lot. And literally anybody could win it. I mean, even a team like Afghanistan, who, they've got people that can come out there and hit the ball, and with any team with
Rashid Khan,
exactly. So it's going to be really, really. I don't think there's a standout favourite. I think probably England and India will start out, and maybe Australia will start out as the favourites, but any team can win that World T20.
We can't count out England also purely because of the fact they have Adil Rashid, Moeen Ali, now Parkinson. They are also very good spinners, and they can do well in Abu Dhabi. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we'll have some rapid fire with James sir. So get ready. No long answers. There will be no discussion. Just rapid fires, and I guess sir will be ready to answer in just 5 to 10 seconds. So. Your favorite cricketing memory and your worst cricketing memory?
Favorite cricketing memory would be England winning the World Cup. I think, that's about as good as it gets, isn't it? And particularly in that situation, the Super Over. Worst cricketing memory? I haven't got one. Okay. There's no such thing as bad cricket. Your team might lose, but there's no such thing as bad cricket.
Yeah. Your favorite cricketer? From England and from outside England?
Favourite cricketer in England would be Joe Root. I am slightly biased because I've kind of known him a little bit since he was a teenager, but terrific player. Favourite cricketer from overseas? I always get criticised for being negative about Virat Kohli's captaincy, but I think he's probably my favourite cricketer from overseas. I love the way
Virat fans.
Yeah, I love the way he plays the game under a lot of pressure at times. I don't like the way he confronts umpires and gets a little bit too hard on his sleeve, but I think he's terrific.
Exactly. Okay. Now, any plans of coming to India in the recent future?
I'll tell you what, I would love to. I honestly would love to. I've never been to India. One of my top items on my bucket list is to come out to the IPL and to cover the IPL for, well, ideally its duration. That's definitely something I want to tick off in the future.
Absolutely. Have you tried any Indian dishes?
I love curry.
Which curry? Chicken curry or any other?
Honestly, I will eat most things. India, Thai and Indian are my favorite overseas cuisine.
Yeah. Okay. Now tell us about your future plans, what you will do, and about your podcast. Any such future plans which you want to reveal in our channel? I know you shouldn't reveal any secrets, but anything what you want to do, any advice to the youngsters who are following sports? So a couple of words regarding it.
Okay. Cricket Badger podcast. I want to try and keep that going, get some good guests on there, do a few more videos. It's all audio at the moment. I want to do a bit more video, a bit like this, I guess. I want to try, I love doing commentary. That's my favorite thing. So if anybody's listening to this and has got a spare spot in their commentary box for an IPL season, I am more than happy to come out and do that. I'd love to do that. So
you should come.
That would be something I would really like to do. And in terms, I've been watching the Olympics a lot over the last few weeks. I really love the Olympics. I think
we are covering Olympics also in our channel.
It gives you a chance to watch a load of sports that you don't usually watch. You find yourself at 5 a.m. or something watching a sport that you've never watched before, but because there's an Olympic medal on it, all of a sudden you start getting all teary-eyed and emotional. Come on, because it matters. But I just love the way in that. I think, talk about advice for youngsters and what have you. I just think what a lot of the athletes have said after winning medals and what have you is just kind of live your dreams, take it as far as you can. I'm nothing special. I love cricket, and I think enthusiasm and passion can take you a long, long way in the world. And if you if you want to be a cricketer, if you want to be a commentator, if you want to be a writer or whatever it is in sport, or whether it's something else completely different, just take it as far as you can, because there's no such thing as nothing's impossible.
That was absolutely well said, and I have personally learned a lot of things from James sir. Okay, guys, it's time to wrap up the show. We will catch up with James sir again in between India-England series when India goes on to beat England, of course. So I think you would, of course, try to come again. Hopefully, sir, you have enjoyed the show, and I will be giving the links about sir's podcast in our description. You need to go and listen to it. It is very entertaining, and it is also, it gives you a lot of knowledge. Okay, guys, so time to wrap up the show. Do like, share, and subscribe the channel. Till then, goodbye, take care. Last words. How did you enjoy 40 minutes? And if any mistake from my side, please excuse us.
I'd loved it. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, guys, so it's time to wrap up. See you again tonight. Goodbye.